Hello, everybody. In this lesson, we're looking at media classifications. This topic is important because, as media planners, we ought to be able to understand the various media platforms available to us, their strengths and their weaknesses, so that we are better able to decide which platforms are good for which product or service that we are working with. Secondly, this class is also important because sometimes a client might need for you to explain why you think certain platforms are better for their product or for their service. And as such, you need to have an idea of the strengths and weaknesses of the various platforms, so you better be able to convince your client, especially if you're a freelancer. If you're not able to convince the client of the necessity or of the platforms that you are suggesting to them, they might go away with the impression that you do not know what you're about, and the chances that you lose the deal is high. Now, previously, the two main classifications of media were print and electronic. Print basically had to do with anything that was printed, and then electronic had to do with anything that was electronic. So, television, radio, internet, mobile. And then for print, you had the billboards, newspapers, magazines. Now, it was pretty straightforward. As time went on, it was realized that the two classifications did not adequately describe the available media platforms. So, paid, owned, and earned media were new classifications that were given. Now, paid because you pay before your ad is seen in these platforms or on these platforms. So radio, newspapers, magazines, display ads, search, paid search, etc. You would have to pay before you see yourself there. And then there's owned media. These are platforms for advertisement that are owned by the company itself. So we have the brand itself. So we have the company website or the brand's website. If you engage in custom events, like certain events that are related, or should I say specific to your brand. So people know, oh, these people organize the annual, this, that. Now, so that platform is for you to advertise whatever product or service that you as the company you want to. And remember, it is owned, it is yours. And then there is earned media or earned exposure, where your brand is sent out based on activities of your organization or your brand. So let's say you decide to engage in some philanthropic activity, and then the media houses pick it up and then they report it. Now remember, you are not paying for it, so we say it is earned. So online you see some Twitter mentions, or no, because an organization is doing one thing good or another thing bad, people are talking about it. So we call that earned media. Now remember that earned media is not specific to a particular media platform. Just like unlike in the past where we say print, and then we're talking about printed newspaper, magazine, blah blah. Earned media could be on any platform, because the earned media could be online, it could be on radio, newspaper, wherever. So that's how it works. Even with this classification, there are still others who feel it is not adequate. Why is this so? Under owned media, you see I put social media and then I put a question mark there. Now, this is because some people ask, shouldn't social media be called or classified under rented media? Now, why do they say so? This is because the social media platform, they believe, even though you say it is owned, you have your Facebook page, and it is your Facebook page as a business or a brand, technically it belongs to Facebook. So if Facebook decides to change certain rules or regulations concerning how people can use their platform, it affects you, the organization. Some years ago, it was easy for a post on a page to reach lots of people without promoting. But now, this isn't so. As an organization would have to pay for almost every post they make for it to reach at least half of their clients if they would want to. If they do not, it reaches just about 5 or 10% of their followers. So it is important that you realize this distinction: paid, old, and print, electronic, and then some people are saying rented media. So you realize that the definitions are fluid, and they may, as the weeks, months, years go by, people may come up with different suggestions. But what is important is for you to know, differentiate, and understand what it is that you are looking for. So we're going to start by looking at print. What are some of the advantages of billboard, newspapers, magazines, and how can it help you as an advertiser? With a billboard, I put into bracket print because in today's world, not all billboards are print billboards. Some are even electronic. So that's also another example of how the definitions have become fluid. So previously, billboard was strictly have been under print, but today it can be also put under electronic. So one advantage of billboards is the targeting that it offers. Billboards offer targeting through location, location, location. If you sell, for instance, real estate, and you realize that the real estate is made for a certain target group, let's say it's made for the high class, you realize then that it is important to select a good location where people who can afford your property often use. So in many cities, you realize that billboards that talk about certain types of cars, billboards that talk about certain levels of real estate are often seen around the airports, around the executive neighborhoods, so we say. So billboards allow you to easily target the people you're looking for at based on the routes that they would often use to and from work or recreation or wherever. Billboards also have a higher eyeball number. By eyeball number, if it was digital, I think I will call it impressions. Because of its location by the roadside, and as people pass by it every day, they see the ads many times, increasing the chances that someone is going to call you. On the flip side, billboards are expensive. More often than not, you would have to pay for the location of the billboard, that is the plot of land that you have put your billboard on, and then you would have to pay something monthly to the local authorities for citing your billboard wherever it is that you did. Sometimes there are advertising agencies that pay that offer their own billboard spaces. It's blank, and then you as a planner will go to them and then say, hey, I want the space that you have over here, billboard space for rent, and then they will give you their bill. Either way, it is expensive. So that's one challenge with billboards. There's short exposure time. Billboards are, of course, by the roadside, and people are often in a hurry, either in a vehicle or walking about their businesses when they come into contact with your billboards. So more often than not, they see it quickly, or should I say yes, they see you quickly as they're going. As you're in a vehicle, you look up, you see the billboard, a few seconds later, and then it's gone, unless you're lucky as an advertiser and then there's traffic on that route. And sometimes that is an advantage, or sometimes that could even drive up the cost of a billboard, the location and then the traffic on that location. So but more often than not, the exposure time is short, so people are unable to maybe get all the full message that you're trying to send. And that's why it's advisable to not clutter your billboards when you're making your message design. Cluttered airwaves. Uh, oh, Cluttered airwaves is referring to the use of the word airwaves over here. I'm actually trying to mean radio. It should not have been here, but since it's here, let's see how we can make it work. When you drive into town today, there are a lot of billboards that scatter the landscape. So we could still look at it as it being cluttered in the sense that there are so many billboards shouting messages to people that more often than not, it is likely that your brand's message may not be seen. So yeah, we made it work. And then finally, there's difficulty in measuring. It is difficult to know how many people have actually seen your ad, how many people have actually moved from the lead stage to maybe a decision making stage. It's difficult to track or measure its effectiveness. So that's also another disadvantage with the billboards. Now we go to newspaper. We say newspaper has wide circulation. Although we often say this is in reference to national newspapers because there are some newspapers that do not have as wide a circulation. Some newspapers are regional. Some newspapers are only for certain cities. So we have to be careful when we are talking about or we are looking at wide circulation as an advantage of the newspaper. It often is targeted or is referring to newspapers that are national. And when they are national, yes, indeed, they have a wider coverage. In many cities or towns or countries around the world, newspapers have been the number one source of information for a lot of people. It has been the number one source of information for a lot of people. So, over the years, many newspaper outlets have developed a whole wide distribution network all over the country. And so, it makes it easy for them to distribute to all or different kinds of demographics across any part of the country or wherever country you are in. So that is also another advantage. That's also an advantage of the newspaper. Another advantage is the low CPH, which is the cost per head. Now, so basically, cost per head is looking at, well, as it says, cost per head. So if let's say you are running an advert in a newspaper and you're charged $5,000, and then they say their readership is about 5,000 people, then you do the math and then you know how much you're paying for each person to see it. So it's $5,000, 5,000 people. It means the cost per head is $1. So for each person who the newspaper shows your ad to, the newspaper is taking technically $1 from you. Visual appeal. Newspapers allow for images to be shown. And so because of that, it allows you to talk about your product or service, present your product or service in an appealing way, which is adding visuals and not only text. It has a high validity perception. Over here, what this means is that a lot of people respect the newspaper. A newspaper is seen as one of the key sources of valid information. And although with millennials, it is a little different, as you can see down there in its disadvantage. As it stands now, people from the ages from around 35, 40 upwards still see newspapers as the number one source of information. So if the newspaper is a high validity perception platform and you put your ad in there, it gives some kind of credibility to your brand. So yes, that is one advantage of the newspaper. Now, to look at the disadvantages of the newspaper, short shelf life. Newspapers, after being read for the day, become obsolete the next day because the next day a new one is coming out. So if you run ads in a newspaper, the chances are that after a day or two, people would see that newspaper and not bother to open it because they feel whatever information in there is dead and gone. So it means that that morning or afternoon or evening that people pick up that newspaper, if they do not do that, then it means that's it. And you see people using newspapers for papier mache and for lining their cupboards and all those things. So after 2 days, 3 days, you go to certain offices to they archive them, and not many people go to archives to look at ads or even read the newspaper. So basically means it's gone. Short shelf life. Print quality. The quality of print for newspapers is often low, and this because newspapers, especially the countrywide or nationwide newspapers, print hundreds of thousands of copies and in some cases even millions of copies. So if the quality of the paper and the print is high, the cost goes high. So because of that, they would have to reduce the quality of the paper and then of the print. And that will also affect how people will see your ad. Affect how people will see your ad. So sometimes the color separation is not coming out well. You want to use some colors to make it to suggest something to the audience, but the newspaper is not able to bring it out um, critically or perfectly. So that is another disadvantage of the newspaper. And as earlier mentioned, there's low millennial readership for newspapers because a lot of the millennials go on their phones, that is online, mobile, their tablets and laptops and all those devices they use to access the internet for information. So if you are targeting millennials with a product or a service and you focus too much on newspapers, you are likely to run at a loss because of this. Now, for magazines, magazines have long life. Magazines are known to have long life. You walk into people's offices and then you are looking for somebody and they say, "Hey, gentleman, lady, take a seat. He'll be with you shortly." And then on the table or on the desk, you see they have displayed magazines for you to read. You pick up a magazine and then you see one magazine was in 2017. Another magazine could be from 2005. As long as it's not tattered, information in it is good, they put it there. So it means that your ad is almost immortal in a magazine. And because of the quality of magazines, not many people throw it away like they throw newspapers away. So magazines have long life. Magazines have quality presentation. It is not often that you see a magazine that has poor paper quality or poor print quality. Almost all the time, magazines are printed on quality paper and sometimes glossy. Well, most of the time it's glossy, and then the picture quality is perfect. So it makes it attractive to anyone who is looking at your ad. If you're like, imagine you're advertising a brand like Coca-Cola and you want the bottle to be sweating, as they say. They just took it out of the fridge, and then you want people to see how cool it is. It is easier to depict this in a magazine than in a newspaper. Magazines are also for leisure reading, as in the first example. People pick up magazines to read when they are bored. And that means that people will encounter your ad when they are relaxed. And more often than not, if they are relaxed, they read everything. They will take their time to read your ad and then get the message that you want to send them. So they don't read it under pressure. So that's another advantage of the magazine. Looking at the disadvantages, magazines are expensive, of course, because of the quality of the print and as we discussed, and the paper, and then of course the printing. Magazines have permanent errors. Magazines often have their cycle. That's the word I'm looking for, cycle. A magazine could be printed once a year. Some could be printed twice a year, some quarterly, however, some monthly. Now, because of how magazines are treated. That is because of their long life, because they are not tossed away easily. If there is misinformation in your ad, it is likely to be permanent. So if you're quoting a phone number in your ad and you put it in a magazine, it means that 2 years down the line, somebody may see the ad, be interested in whatever thing that you have to sell, call that wrong number, and then, yeah. So magazines have that disadvantage. Magazines have late viewing, and I'm linking it to the permanent errors that I talked about. Um, because of, again, its long life, magazines are not, people don't rush to read magazines that like they would a newspaper. So if a newspaper comes out today, everybody's looking at getting a newspaper today, get the information out, and then toss it somewhere. But people do not rush to go for a magazine because it was launched today, because of its long life. So because of that, if you're running things like a promotion, which is when promotions are timed, so if you're running something like that, the chances that people are going to see and react to your message within the time frame is limited. So that you should take that into consideration. Magazines also have long lead times. Now, when we're talking about lead times, we're talking about how long it takes for the magazine from inception for whatever it is that you have sent to them to be printed and seen by people. Because of their cycle, if a magazine prints 3 times in a year and you sent it to them when they had just come up with their latest edition, it means that you would have to wait for the next 3 months before your ad would come out. So that means that if you're using time for a certain, let's say it's Valentine, you're running a promotion for Valentine, and it is January, and you go and then they say, oh, we just printed our latest edition. The next edition is in April. It means that you will not have access to. So you have to always be planning ahead if you want to use a particular magazine. Know their current, what they call it, their turnaround times, or the times that they come out with their editions, so that you would not suffer such a consequence. Let's go to direct mail. When we're talking about direct mail, we are talking about one, emails, and then two, talk about mail as in through the post office box. But because this is a print discussion, print media discussion, we're looking at direct mail as mail sent to the mailbox. Now, this is not common in many countries, but in countries that have this, it is often because the address system in the country is good. When the address system in a country is not good, it is difficult to have a sustained direct mailing plan. So that's when, again, to repeat, that's where you send your brochure or your advertising material to a particular address, whether house address or maybe their post office box where they go to retrieve their mail, and then they see that your ad is part of the mails that they have received. The advantages: one, because you know who you are sending the mail to, you are able to personalize the advert. So if it is John you're sending it to, you can say, hello, John. And when advertisements are personalized, it gives this feeling of they know me, I am recognized to the potential lead or to the customer. And that often encourages them to even go ahead to read more. At least the first line catches them. Maybe in a later discussion of crafting of messages and how to start messages and what to say to attract attention, maybe we can look into detail into some of these things. But talking about detail, the next point in under direct mail is that they are detailed. Remember, it is personalized. It is just like a magazine. You're able to take your time to say what you want to say in your brochure or flyer or whatever document you have sent to them. So the direct mail allows you to be detailed in your presentation to the customer or your client. There is minimum wastage. When you look at billboards, when you look at newspapers, when you look at magazines, You are anticipating. It's like it's like casting your net and hoping you would catch a fish. But with direct mail, it's more targeted at people who you know these are people who will be interested in my product or service. So it reduces the number of people who would receive your mail or your advertisement and not be interested. So it is well targeted. So there's minimum wastage with direct mail. And it is easily measured. If in a quarter you have sent direct mail to 200 people, it is easy for you to know that these people have gotten back to you, these people have taken action, or they haven't. So it's easy for you to know the metrics and then decide to improve upon them. Disadvantages of direct mail. Of course, it has limited coverage because it is often targeted. The coverage is not as wide as the newspaper or magazine. But of course, depending on how you look at it, it could also be an advantage because you would say that it is not everybody who is your customer. So you know who you are looking for or looking at. List generation difficulty. Although it sounds simple, it is not easy to get a good list of people to send your direct mail to. So imagine you want to you are running ad for Mercedes, maybe a new brand of Mercedes, something something. I'm not good with cars, something something 2020 edition, which a lot of people may love, but not a lot of people may be able to buy. So if you are generating your list, you would need to be careful, do your critical research to know who are the kinds of people who will be able to purchase this. Where can I find their addresses or their post office box numbers? Do they often go to their post office boxes? Is their mail or their address correct? Before so that is how some of the process you go through to generate this list. So it is not easy, but when you eventually do it, it is rewarding. So a challenge with direct mail is the generation of the list to send the mails to. And of course, it's not suitable for illiterates. Well, with print, almost all of them, well, yeah, are not suitable for illiterates. But direct mail allows you to be detailed. So more often than not, it has more write-ups or more text in there for people to read. And illiterates would not be too psyched about this. So yes, a disadvantage for that is it is not suitable for illiterates. So if your target audience and a higher number of them are illiterates, you may have to either decide against using direct mail, or you would have to be selective as to who or which of your target audience are literates, which ones are illiterates, and how to assess them. So direct mail is often suitable for specialized fields. It's often suitable for specialized fields. So you have a product that is, let's say, from the oil and gas industry. When you look at the general population, there are common products and services like mobile phones, like clothing, which often, as we say, they are general. But there are certain products that are for specific kinds of people at specific times. So when you use direct mail to speak to these people or to reach these people, it is often more effective than when it is general. So it is put here as a disadvantage because you would have to hold on. So it is ideal for these specialized fields or particular products or services. For general products or services, it is more cost effective if you use the more general platforms as compared to direct mail. Brochures and flyers. Brochures and flyers are small and handy, of course, so it's easy for people to meet people in traffic and offices and wherever you think you would meet your target audience and then distribute them. And they're cost effective. That's because for a large number of prints of brochures or flyers, you get discounts. It's all over. The higher number of brochures you print, the lesser, or yes, the cheaper they are. Although this is an advantage, sometimes it can be a disadvantage because you may need brochures for a particular program or event, and you may not need as many a number as could get you a discount. So maybe they will say, oh, this is how much each cost. But if you're printing 1,000, this is how much it will cost for you. Meanwhile, you're designing a brochure to distribute to maybe 200 people at a particular event, and after that, that's it. And so, because you may need to cut down on cost, you would either have to print the 1,000, which is wastage, which is a disadvantage, or you may have to just print the 200 that you would want, which would be comparatively expensive. So that one is a chicken and egg situation, and it's up to you to decide how it would fit into your plans. We've talked about wastage, and then to talk again about the wastage. It is common to see that brochures and flyers that are giving out in public are often crumpled and thrown away soon after the people receive it. Some, out of courtesy, receive it, take it from you, and then they throw it away. And others, because it is forced on them, they take it, they throw it away. Others read it, and then after that, that's it. They have no use for it again. And again, they throw it away. So you realize that you spend a lot of money for people to look at something for a few seconds and then throw it away. So sometimes you want to consider, is this the most effective for my purpose? That's very important. And it has limited reach. Brochures and flyers are often giving out or handed out. So it means that you look for a certain location and then you go there and then you get your people to distribute to your prospective audience. So the reach for brochures or flyers is often limited. And because now we often talk about the environment, and as I mentioned earlier, people wastage and people throwing away the paper, you wonder whether for such a limited reach and for such a small number, if it is environmentally friendly to go ahead and then print brochures. So that is something for the environmentally ethical individuals to discuss amongst yourselves. So we could see that in the discussion section if there's anybody who has any idea or suggestions as to environmental friendliness and brochures. It would be sweet to hear your discussion or your argument for or against printing of brochures. So that'll be all for print. So basically, we've gone through common print media, their strengths, and then their weaknesses. The next lesson will look at electronic media, and then as we did with this one, we're going to look at the strengths and weaknesses. All right, so let's go.